Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. This time we'll be talking about the final tier list update for the refined priority tier list. As I've said before, I'm going to stop doing YouTube at the end of this month, though I might have a few tier lists that will be a bit late, so those will come eventually, obviously. But for the most part, this is going to be the last chapter on the refined tier list update. This is really just the 29th update I'm doing to the refined tier list, which means 29 months of doing this. You know, it feels kind of weird that I've done this for 2 years and a half. I will also say sorry for the delay. I'm gonna be completely honest, it's mostly because of accumulated fatigue. When I actually announced that I was going to stop YouTube for my own mental health, to also relax, and I started to read the comments, I kind of just relaxed, I guess, and I just ended up realizing just how tired I was mentally, because my god did I sleep for 14 hours after this, and then the day after I slept for 10 more. And keep in mind, I sleep on average 5 to 6 hours a day. Yeah. Apparently I was way more stressed than I felt I was. So for a while I just kind of recovered. So as a result, that's why the video is a bit late. Sorry about that. Another thing I want to say is, I might not cover Choose Your Legend. I wanted to at first, but then when they decided to make the character I was the most excited for, obviously Dimitri, literally the worst unit of the banner, and also everyone has like one of the most boring outfit they could come up with. Really? Tier 3 promotions? That's it? Wow, you really went far for that one. Ugh. It's just so disappointing to me. Also, there's not much to say about them. All of them are extremely straightforward. The only one that really isn't straightforward is Claude. And because he's not infantry, he is very limited in what he can do, so wahoo, there's really just not much to talk about here. So I might just not do it. As for my opinion of who's the best unit to go for, it's either Claude or Lucifia, depends on your account really. Just putting it this way, Claude is a fantastic tank, but has the problem of being in flyers, so not really too amazing at that. And because any bow units will be able to just shred him to nothing. And then also Egren kind of does the same thing he does. The only difference between Egren and he is just the fact that Egren tends to be more efficient because he can have special spiral. Maybe in the future Claude will have more to his name, because the problem is really that flyers have just no B slot to really work with. Especially for a unit like him. I mean, he has like Mystic Boost, and that's kind of it, because most of the flyer exclusive B skill that we're getting are for sword, lance, and axes, and bow units get nothing, so whatever. And Lucifia is also fairly straightforward, just a good beat stick that actually has decent amount of bulk to be able to survive easy, and also has Aspiration the weapon, which means you can actually abuse your B slot. For something like, oh, special spiral with like heavy blade or something like that. And that's basically all there is to it. Like, at the end of the day, it's a very boring banner, which is probably why I'm not going to cover it. Anyway, enough said about Choose Your Legend. Let's talk about this group of unit, which is also one of the least interesting refined batch, minus one of them, that we've got in forever. Just being honest here. But at the same time, not exactly surprised. So, let's talk about it, eh? So as you can see, most of them are really an A+. The only one that isn't is the one that actually has a good refine. That it's not just average or slightly above average. Let's start with the easiest one, which is Cecilia. Now, Cecilia has basically a weapon that's made for how some people were using her. Most people were using her with Blade Tome, I'm gonna be completely honest, because her bulk was able to put her into desperation fairly easily. Her speed was extremely workable with Speed Plus, 4-star plus 10 stats, and Fury. So you could actually truly work on this. Essentially, you would end up with roughly 27 speed, Fury to 30 speed, and then you'd be able to, say, run Darting Blow as a seal, because at the end of the day, you already have the damage. Blade Tome gives you the damage. Have a buff and Fury, and you're already at 45 speed. Again, fairly easy. Actually, no, you'd have 3 more speed, so 48 speed. It's fairly easy to work with, which is one of the reasons why Cecilia was as good as she was. Now she kind of fell off because low skills are a bitch and should have been Cav exclusive, but alas, this is not the case. Can't wait to see what's the new skill that's going to be also like for infantry unit that's going to ruin the meta next. But anyway, tangent aside, essentially our entire weapon is TA Raven. Which I can already tell some people will be like, oh, that sounds super good, because you can deal with like Crom and LA Ulm, and to those people all I have to say is, not really, you can't enemy phase them whatsoever. I mean, you may be able to enemy phase Crom, but certain sets are just going to run you over. For example, if you have to deal with Sturdy Impact or Mirror Impact, probably won't be able to one-shot him. If you have to run with like against Attack Speed Push, because Life and Death, you should be able to deal with this. Well, Attack Speed Push, you might actually miss the kill, because you can't buff, you can't debuff him, you get -9 attack. So even if you have Triangle Adept and everything, you basically start with 37 attack. So with Combat Triangle and TA, you jump up to 51. That's not enough. That's not enough. Yeah, even if you have Attack Plus or 4-star plus 10, that's still not enough. You're not even close. And that's kind of the problem. You typically will have to initiate and be able to double them if you want to actually have a decent shot at killing me. Or him, I should say. Because Ulm is a non-issue as long as you don't enemy phase him. Because if you enemy phase him, he's typically going to shred you a bit because of his weapon. Which means that anything else that you have to tank will typically one-shot you. It's also worth mentioning that if you have to deal with an Ulm together with a Crom, which is rare, but does happen, sadly enough, because they just scored that well. I mean, at this point, like I said a million times, Crom is one of the best scoring unit in the game. In fact, he is tied for best. And, yeah, that's kind of depressing, isn't it? But it is kind of just what it is. I believe Brave Edelgard now has that title, but it's not even by that much, and Brave Edelgard is not that great. Sorry. Like, Edelgard and Dimitri are both kind of not that great in the Brave banner, but essentially the entire shtick here is just... I mean, you may be able to deal with Ulm fairly well with this. Crom is always a, well, it depends situation in so many cases, and it sucks, but it's just kind of how it is. Because, yeah, you can't always bait him, because what ends up happening is, if he has impact and you do more than half of his HP a hit, let's just say you do that, then he's in Wings of Mercy range, so... Oh no! You see what I mean? It's kind of the problem. When you have a Dancer together with Crom just becomes really annoying, and Crom is really annoying to begin with, so... yeah. This weapon is still a good one-off in general, just because having anything that can actually deal with Crom. Because, keep in mind, the best part about this weapon is the fact that TA is in the weapon. So if you're basically really, like, focusing on dealing with, you know, Crom, this can be a good option, because what you can do at that point, is just, hey, I have an A slot open. My TA is not wasting my A slot, so I can actually have more attack. More attack is very good, so, you know. So as far as builds are concerned, I really did not win for a 5-star plus 10 build. I do think if you want a 5-star plus 10 Cecilia, this weapon is utter trash outside of AA, because it's the only way you can actually really abuse this weapon. In every other mode, it's really rare that you're going to really struggle with blue and colorless units. If you do an AR, I mean, it's going to be one of the two, rarely both of them, and if it's both of them, you can't even deal with both. At least not consistently, because Chrom hits up to 95 attack. Actually, I think at this point he can break the 100 attack, because the idiots at I has decided Gen 4 should be able to get 10 flowers as well, right? No, they shouldn't. You just put them on the same level as Gen 5 units. Why? Why are you doing this? It doesn't help. You're literally giving 10 flowers to the actual most frustrating unit to come across. And Alm? Oh, Gen 5 is great. Anyway, all that to say, yeah, she can work as a fairly decent counter for AA, and pretty much nothing else for that weapon in particular. But that's still a very important thing, because there's not that many units that can even stand to Chrom, and that's kind of a problem. Still, where she can excel is a bit more niche than, say, Sylvain, because Sylvain actually has a speed stat, so he's a bit easier to work with against Chrom. Chrom can be very annoying, and depending on the set, Cecilia will not be able to deal with him. So here is what I suggest. It's basically reliant on quick riposte and having enough speed to prevent the double. So if you're dealing with a speed plus Chrom with something like Darting Blow in a Seal slot or Swift Sparrow, give up on using this. However, if you're dealing with the base kit Chrom, this is fine up to a plus 10 Chrom. Because at the end of the day, yes, the attack gets removed, so you're down to 51, but with Sturdy Stance 2, you know, twice, which is, all of this is fairly easily accessible. And also, keep in mind, Quick Riposte 2 works just as well. I just put 3 here because 2 looks ugly. Like, I'm just gonna say it like that. But yeah, Chrom will push your attack down all the way from that, you know, that 65? Yeah, all the way down to 50. Actually, yeah, no, it's 50. So 50, so 70 attack because of Triangle Adept. So 70 attack, you do about 30 damage a pop on Chrom. So you will 100% of the time kill Chrom with this. I believe even attack plus 3 can work. I decided to put Sturdy Stance 2 twice here just because it actually fixes her defense. Because even with Sturdy Stance 4 right here, right? You know how she has 38 attack on enemy phase? Well, Chrom pushes that all the way down to 23. Welcome to Chrom, everybody. And you can debuff him. So, yeah. That gives you a bulk of 61. But that means even if Chrom has 100 attack, he goes down to 60. So he will not kill you, no matter what. Which is very good. And that's why I really, like, showed Sturdy Stance 2 twice. That said, most of the sets that will actually push his attack that high tends to be also set that increases his speed or are impact sets. So, you know, neither of which are really options for you to deal with. Because if you get hit twice, you're dead. That's just how it is. Even with 80 attack, it can be very iffy. Which 80 attack gets you down to 40. You get that down to 48 attack. That doesn't sound that scary, right? You still take 25 times 2. You still die. Wahoo! Welcome to Cecilia in general. Or really, Chrom in general, I should say, because it's not really Cecilia's fault, it's just that Chrom is really annoying. Really obnoxious. Keep in mind, if you feel like the attack is not needed, you can also use Steady Posture as the seal. That also works just fine, at least I believe it should, which would make your speed more consistent in preventing the double. if it's not a speed variant. But yeah, that's about all there is to say about Cecilia. Very straightforward, there's not much to it. She's mostly an AA counter and not much else. Is she a good counter in AA though? Absolutely. Just in general, Chrom is very frustrating to deal with, so having anything to deal with certain variants of Chrom, because there's only one unit in the game that is consistent at dealing with Chrom 100% of the time, and that's Rinka, okay? Outside of Rinka, it always depends. There's always a, but if he does that, he fucks you over. That's just how it is. Rinka is the only one that can say just, nope, I always work, because she always will proc a special, she always will do a ton of damage, and she combos into Wrath extremely well to the point that Chrom will typically do enough damage to push her in Wrath but not much else, which means what ends up happening is just, oh, I'm in Wrath range, oh, I get 2 charge because I got initiated on, which means Bonfire is instantly ready. I get 5 attack and death because I got initiated on. Close Foil also gives me 5 attack and death. I think you can kind of see what's coming here. You have a 20-25 damage Bonfire coming up with plus 10 on top of it because of Wrath. So that's 35 damage with the spec itself. And not to mention, you're looking at like, even with like his debuff, about 50 attack without combat triangle, which pushes that to 60, so you know, you typically will deal with Chrom, even with sturdy impact, you will do just fine. And that's the thing about Rinka that makes her so good for this. But other than Rinka, there's just no real 100% counter out there. There's always going to be like one type of set that will screw you over, which is why when there's counters, they are worth working with. But yeah, anyway, that's enough about Cecilia. Let's move on to the next one. Next one is Shiro, surprising no one, not a really good refine. One thing to say here is that this is a bit different because of the writing, but essentially if unit is within 2 space of an ally, you get 5 attack and death, and you neutralize all stat penalty, not just 2 attack and death, but all stat penalty, which is very good. It's kind of also making me confused, because the idea is to reflect Sigurd's Breath. What does Sigurd's Breath do? Well, you get 5 attack and speed if you're solo, I believe. And you neutralize the foe's bonuses. Here's the reason why I say I'm confused. Sigurd's a cav unit. What the hell kind of B-slot are you running? Desperation or LOL? That's it, right? Why the hell is this weapon just getting rid of enemy buffs? It just kind of means that the B-slot you can run feels pointless to some extent. Whereas if he had this effect, where he neutralizes his own penalty, that would have made him really good. Actually able to combo that into a low skill is fairly solid. Whereas Shiro would be getting rid of enemy buffs, but the thing is, while he can use a low skill, you have to realize he's an infantry unit. He has options for B-slots, unlike Cavs. He can use Special Spiral, he can use Wrath, he can use Spurn even. There is a lot of things he can use, so that would have been really solid for him. Neutralizing penalty for him is, I mean, it's always a plus, never a minus, but it's not that helpful overall. It's kind of just really awkward. Not to mention, all he gets is attack and speed plus 9 basically, which only on enemy phase, and I'm just like, oh, why? The only reason why he's above Lucas is because he has a speed stat that's workable, which can be very useful here and there. And also the fact that, you know, what Lucas got was sturdy stance. Okay? You don't even need to refine his pref for him to really function. That's just kind of how it is. Like, he doesn't need it. He can just have the base breath and working fine. Here you get 5 attack death and get rid of penalty. I mean, it's definitely better than sturdy stance, I'll say that. That said, Lucas has a better base for a pref. Slaying is so much better in general. But yeah, let's talk about build, shall we? So, yeah. Surprise, surprise, low skills. Now, one of the problem is because he doesn't have cooldown -1, the idea is to just really push your def up and proc Ignis. Not much else to say than that. You also, with Speed Res Solo, push your speed up quite a bit, which is extremely helpful in general, but also is very good because you can prevent doubles. That said, his speed can be a bit awkward, so that's why low attack speed is here instead of low attack def. So here he hits 49 speed. As far as attack is concerned, he's actually hitting 74, which is not too bad. 74-49 is pretty solid, and also defensively speaking, he has 54 def and 41 res. I tried to solve it. Wait, no, actually, that is incorrect. He has 57 defense and 44 res. My bad. I forgot to also add the lol. But yeah, it's overall fairly solid, makes him fairly bulky, and the idea is as long as you double him with Brave Lucina, you can basically get hit back proc Ignis, right? Ignis with basically 54 def, because it's 57 only because of the low. 54 def essentially turns into 45 damage. Now more. It's less. 43 damage. Ignis, which is really solid. Essentially, whatever comes to you is going to get hit by the bigness and basically implode. It is extremely solid, but it's also something that other units can typically do to some extent, especially with units such as Chris now. Geese especially is a relevant topic because Geese is a 4-star focus currently on a banner, and Geese can do something extremely similar to this while also having access to other things. Flowing Lens in general kind of just feels like a slightly better weapon than what Shiro got, if I'm being honest. But oh well, that's kind of just how it is. Overall, it's still decent, still able to work pretty well. As for the second set, which is a more damage-oriented set, or more like, you know, get hit, instantly destroy the enemy, there it is. I mean, right here you hit still 54 defense, so you get 43 damage from Ignis, which is pretty solid. And your speed here is going to be 50, which also is fairly solid. As far as attack is concerned, you are still on 70 attack, which is, again, very solid. The main part is really the fact that he cannot get debuffed here while all of this is going on, and you still have 41 res, as I said. The idea is just you get hit and then you proc on them. It's very straightforward, but that's kind of the problem with the character. He is very straightforward in nature. You can also kind of abuse Spurn if you go Speed Plus, but I don't really advise for it. I would say it's definitely better to go for Special Spiral or low attack speed, because those skills are going to be more obnoxious to deal with for the enemy. And that's about all I have to say about Shiro. As I said, he's very straightforward and he kind of misses the point of himself. Shiro's best point was the fact that he has a fairly versatile stat line. The only stat that he really is behind with was res. But the thing with res is you can salvage it while working on another stat. You can absolutely salvage it. Like right here, just look at it. Speed Res Solo pushes you to 35, 36, 35, 28. And then you have a boon in res, and then you have 35, 36, 35, 31. You have a very good, like, all-rounder stat line at that point. And unlike someone like Fjorm, who also has an all-rounder stat line, you can, one, receive blessings, but also, more importantly, it's easier to pull, and your attack is not ass trash. 35 is pretty solid overall. So yeah, it's just kind of a shame if they had been smart enough, they would just have made so that instead of, you know, attack def plus 5, first off, Sigbert, make that 4 across the board, and make it 4 across the board for Shiro. That's all they needed to do. And it really is a shame that they didn't do it, because that would have helped him tremendously in demarking himself. Because, like, for example, on build 2, right? I used Drain Drive Speed because his speed is too shit. If this gave 4 across the board, I would be at 50 speed already, which means I can actually use this for Drain Drive Res or Drain Drive Attack. Really, it actually just gives you more options. Alas, instead we just get that, which, you know, if that had been like 4 res also, look at the bulk, right? 54 and then 41, right? Well, it would have been 53 and 45. And then, if you have also Joint Drive Res, it's 53 defense and 49 res. That's really good. You'd be able to be a good mixed tank, while also having a solid amount of speed. Alas, this is not what we got, so instead we get the boy that is like, I'm all attack and def, which means you want to invest in the rest. Thank God we got speed res solo, but like I said, Geese does this very similarly, and to some extent even better than he does. I will be honest, if I were to use Shiro as a plus 10, I would use Flowing Lens over Bright Naginata, because Flowing Lens does minus 5 attack and def, which essentially means 5 attack and def and res for you, and you can get a speed refine, which means 2 more HP and 3 more speed. So for essentially for 5 res and 3 speed, you lose 5 attack and def. Nobody cares about the attack and def. He already is good in that aspect. That's kind of the problem, really. Flowing Lance is an absolutely amazing inheritable weapon. It's just kind of a shame that, you know, kind of a shame that we get this refine on Shiro. It honestly just feels like this is a refine from 2 years ago. This could have come out 2 years ago, and I would have been like, yep, that's pretty decent for the time. You know, back in the day where having a lot of def and like using this with like Steady Stance 4 to deal with Zelgius would have actually been amazing. We're not in that time anymore though. That's the problem with Nintendo, or really IS as well. It's just they are stuck in the past because they keep designing shit a year in advance, and it's like, bruh, why are you still giving infantry stuff? They have been broken for 2 years. Stop. Now they start to do flyer stuff, and they will go overboard with this for like the next year. I can already tell you. I don't know, man. It's just kind of disappointing. Anyway, let's move on to Setsuna. So, Setsuna, Wall of Text Jr. Setsuna is weird, but at the same time, the best way to really describe her is she is what Faye should have been. Let me explain. They have the same base effect, except for a very specific difference. If foe initiates. Yeah. The difference is that Faye needs to be initiated on for the first effect to proc, which is 4 across the board. Setsuna doesn't. It works on both phases. You can get 4 across the board on both phases. The problem is it only works on ranged units. But at least it's not ranged units and enemy phase only, especially considering, like, let me just put it this way. Do you want to face tank a Crumb? Do you want to face tank an Alm? Oh wow, shocking, that's the 2 most common ranged unit of Arena. Or how about the 3rd most common? Legendary Celica. Oh wait, that's just Alm, but again. Same problem. It doesn't work because the unit will double you. The unit takes your def and abuse it against you, and you don't have the speed against it either when it comes down to Faye. I do think Setsuna can kind of work, but she's still way better on initiation. The Refine itself is just, if she has a buff, she gets 5 attack and speed, and cannot get hit by penalty, which is actually fairly important, because when you're talking about a speedster dealing with another speedster, there's one skill that will screw you over, and that's the best of the chill skill, which is chill speed. But here, chill speed does nothing to you as long as you have a buff. And that's actually really huge. It just basically means that Setsuna is more consistent as a result, which is really good when initiating against Alm. It actually is really the main thing you can really do with Setsuna, being a counter to Alm, being a counter to Celica, being a counter to most of the ranged speedsters, basically. Because her bulk is going to be much better than you think. 26-27 is not bad with 37 HP. Putting this on a 4-star plus stand, you tend to actually have a good shot of HP at that point. You tend to have about 66, 67, I think, melee defense, which also means to some extent she can deal with Chrom sometimes, as long as you have Flashing Blade and Luna. That said, it's only some of them, like the close counter one, the ones that are not focused on making your life literal hell. That said, for these ones, you absolutely need to have a speed buff or res buff on your party, as this is not at start of combat effect, meaning if your buff get negated in combat, this effect may not be able to come off. I've not tested it myself, but I believe that's how it would work. So yes, speed and res buffs are absolutely required if you want to abuse this weapon. So yeah, she is fairly solid overall to deal with, like I said, mostly ranged unit, speedsters especially. But the thing is, unlike Cecilia, where she is completely defined by her ability to deal with either Alm or Chrom sometimes, when it comes down to Setsuna, it's a lot better overall, because you end up having, you know, the ability to deal with other units. Cecilia can definitely deal with other units, potentially, but she is way better with her niche of dealing with Alm, of dealing with Chrom. So, yeah, it's just getting her out of this niche when you have a TA weapon is extremely difficult. There's no blue units that are really dangerous that she's going to be dealing with. I guess Brave Dimitri, maybe? But Dimitri is easily the worst of the Choose Your Legend 4 units, so not much of an achievement there, buddy. Literally use any Blade Tome. All I have to say. Same thing with Edelgard, just use any Blade Tome that's like red. Like, they're easy to counter. But yeah, overall I'd say she's okay, but she does struggle because, again, similar to Cecilia, she is limiting herself to range targets if you want to have the 4 across the board. She can still work without it, absolutely, but at that point you want Desperation absolutely to function with this. So yeah, let's talk about builds. This one should not surprise much people. The idea is just to have, you know, Moonbow, Desperation. Now some of you might be wondering, why Sturdy Impact? Mostly to deal with Chrom. Because at that point, if you're dealing with Chrom, you basically will have 42 defense, though obviously, you know, he's going to debuff your def, so that 42 def goes all the way down to 27. Ain't that fun? I love Chrom. What a balanced unit. Which goes back up to 31 because of the weapon, so 31 def, 41 HP. You are now at 72 bulk. You should be able to tank a hit. Obviously, that's as long as, you know, you're not dealing with a more offensive variation of Chrom. And your attack is way better than it looks. Especially, like, you're like, wow, 55 attack, that means I'm down to 40? Yikes. Yeah, but not really, because the weapon pushes you back to 49, Sturdy Impact pushes you up to 65, Joint Drive Attack pushes you to 69. Nice. But yeah, 69 attack, and you'll hit twice, and you'll proc Moonbow as well. If you want to be more consistent at dealing with Crom specifically, run Luna, because on your first encounter you'll be able to just basically hit 2 charges, get hit 1 charge, and then proc Luna. Basically, it makes your kill rate of Crom very consistent, but as I said, that's only one of the things that makes Setsuna work. Another part is the fact that the res is low enough that you can safely bait Azura, which used to be something that was a bit less important, but the new arena maps are actually so good because they allow you to do this. As long as Azura comes at the bottom of the team, on certain maps you can just bait her, and there's no way for Crom to actually get to hit you, unless Azura dances him. But the thing is, as long as Setsuna is in her attack range, she's going to attack Setsuna, because Setsuna has 33 res, okay? The way AI works with dancers, and I'll say this always because this is something that anyone should know, is the fact that dancers will do one of 2 things, depending on how much damage they do to you. If they do 5 or more damage, okay, they will attack. They will never dance, they will attack instead. Okay? If they do less than 5 damage, they are going to prioritize dancing people over attacking you. So that means if any rally is on the team, because she's most likely going to get rallied before attacking, what ends up happening is that they will go to rally her, and then she's going to dance them. However, if she does 5 damage, they're going to rally her, and she's just going to attack anyway. And that's really good, because it means you can get rid of the dancer early. Setsuna is able to do that. And also that sets her up for Desperation, which is also fairly solid. And then you can combo this into Desperation to deal with Crom, Alm, pretty much is up to you. Setsuna is absolutely amazing for that very specific thing. It gives a lot, and I do mean a lot of potential for her. But yes, it's kind of a bit iffy, because I mean, at the end of the day, she's gonna have 37 res. At the end of the day, it's still fairly solid. It's just, if you're not dealing with a range unit, you lose the 4 across the board, so all you have is the 5 attack speed, penalty negation, and that's it. Which is kind of a shame. It's good, but it's not as good, you know? But again, being able to deal with Alm and Crom is very huge in Arena, and unlike Cecilia, she is more consistent at it. Honestly, the reason why I show her last is because she's just the best of the A+, at least of this batch. I do think I might actually increase her to S tier. If you see that change happen on the tier list, cool, I guess that's going to be something I have done, but I'm not too sure. We'll see. I'll have to ponder about it a bit longer. But yeah, overall, fairly solid unit. Definitely can work a lot better than a unit like Cecilia, because not having speed problem and having access to all of those infantry skills is extremely useful. As for another set, this one is more based on just, you know, enemy phase. If the other one was more all-out player phase, this is more enemy phase. This is more in general to deal with archer or mages in general. Keep in mind, though, that while I do say this, the first set is by far better. It's just if you want to do a more defensive set. Alright, so again, that amount of attack is fairly deceptive. You have 55 attack. The weapon pushes that to 64, sturdy stand to 70, low attack depth to 73, joint drive attack to 77, and mirror stance to 81. Yeah. 81 attack, 56 speed. What? Yeah, that's kind of just how the unit works in general, isn't it? Twin Drive attack is also fairly solid, just to have a buff around. Low attack def basically mean she cannot get any penalty, and you cannot buff your attack and def. That's, you know, the name of the game with Crom, so you can kind of guess how useful that is. And yeah, it's just overall very solid to deal with enemy phase ranged units. That said, Crom is extremely dangerous against this set, and so is Ulm, obviously, because these units will just make your def their bitch, basically. Like, 32 def here goes down to 17. 30 stance in the weapon pushes that back to 27, and low attack def to 30, but you still only have 71 bulk. It is possible to deal with Crom, but it, again, depends on the set with this, so it's a bit iffy. As long as you can survive that hit, though, Crom dies. There's no question about it. As far as res is concerned, you are basically looking... Well, let's talk about the stats in general without, you know, Crom in the picture. 32-33, the weapon pushes that to 36-37. Low attack def pushes that to 39-40. Mirror stance to 39-44. Sturdy stance 32-45-44. So 45 def, 44 res, 56 speed, and 81 attack. Very solid overall, but like I said, some of the main units that are going to be threatening will still be threatening. Ulm is typically seen with Speed Plus, Swiss Sparrow 3, and all that jazz, even though it's only useful in like very specific scenario. So these sets are going to trip you over. However, if you initiate on them with the set I showed before, not going to be a problem. Because it only works on one phase, so obviously it just makes so that Ulm is far from being as dangerous for you. Basically, you just need to be the one initiating, is all. But yeah, overall fairly solid unit. It's just kind of limited by the fact that a weapon only works on ranged units. I might still push her a tier above, because while it only works against those types of unit, when it works, it is extremely solid. She's a very good range counter as a result. But yeah. Moving on to the absolute best unit of the bunch, Legion. Now, Legion, funny enough, at first I thought he was shit, because I misread something. It's really weird when you misread one word and then just throws the weapon in garbage. What I read was the Refine itself saying, at start of combat, if allies' HP is over 50... No, not ally. If units' HP is over 75% or equal. You know how awkward it is with a unit with 22 def and 18 res to stay above 75% HP? Yeah. But now that I know it's foe's HP, that's a lot better. That's a lot better. Now that basic effect is fairly solid. Essentially, it treats anything it hits as if it got hit by panic. Anything that uses bonus doubler, as well as Legendary Azura, will tend to get absolutely tripped over by this weapon. Legendary Eliwood also. Legendary Eliwood team are just basically free food for him, because, I mean, hey, I'm dealing with, say, Edelgard, right? What does Edelgard look like with minus 12 to all stats? Actually, that's kind of a weird pick, because Fire-Water season doesn't really work, but you get what I mean. Like, the idea is, if you have a unit buffing whatever unit, that unit will get a lot worse. And units such as Legion will now beat in attack Edelgard, so she won't be able to proc Gale Force naturally with the weapon. And her attack will also be a lot worse, which means that, you know, Legion can actually be able to deal with her, even deal with like the 2 hits pretty well, which is absolutely disgusting and is by far what makes him as good as he is. So yeah. let's talk about builds. Now, the main one is obviously going to be Spurn. I've also decided to take the liberty of taking IVs, because, not gonna be honest, gonna be honest, is going to come next month. As for the tier list and how much it's going to affect the GHB Tempest Trial tier list, it really isn't. For the most part, it might get some units that are at the absolute bottom, a tier above. But for the most part, most units, it's just kind of like complementing their own strength. Okay? It doesn't make them like so busted or anything of the sort. Like, for example, you know, you have TSA Minerva. Hey, our shitty first merge, which is HP speed def, can now be 3 attack or 3 res. That's really helpful. But does that open any new builds for the unit? Not really. I mean, if you're going for Pegasus Flight, yes, you have stuff like Phantom Res helping you. But again, base Minerva with Resplendent has around the same amount of stat, but it's so much better distributed, and the weapon is so much better for this type of unit that there's no point in really doing that with TSA if you have Resplendent Minerva. At least that's the way I look at it. But yeah, so, you know, just tangent aside, essentially, don't expect the tier list to change widely because we have access to IVs. Speaking of, I'll keep that for the end of the video. So, the refine itself is very simple. It actually opens up his seal slot. It gives him 5 attack and speed as long as the enemy's HP is at 75% or more, which is one of the most laughably easy requirement to have. It can trip you over if you did not kill the unit in one turn, however, obviously, but for the most part, you tend to be just fine. So, why Spurn? Purely because his bulk is overall not that amazing. Is it unusable? Absolutely not. It's very usable. But, and in fact, it should be your main focus. His attack and speed is already fine. If you have speed res solo, on top of the weapon, you are at 56 speed, which is why I went a bit overboard on speed. For the most part, I say 50 speed is right now, is more close to the magic number than 47 now. Just because we have so many speedy units, it can actually prevent certain doubles, which is very helpful. And yeah, 56 is definitely overboard still, but it actually allows you to use Spurn. Now, Spurn allows you to survive a lot easier, and in tandem with, you know, Def Plus, you have 35 Def, 34 Res. That's pretty solid overall. But you also have 67 attack and 56 Res. And this is what really makes the weapon work, you get an extra charge every time you hit. So essentially it's Heavy Blade without needing, well, the Seal Heavy Blade, but also without needing the attack. So essentially what ends up happening is you get hit, you hit back for 2 charge, and then you proc Luna. If the enemy has a lot of def, which are the only thing that are going to actually give him trouble, you'll basically get hit back, proc Luna, and kill them most of the time. Which is very solid, because, I mean, 67 attack, you won't really struggle. And also, attack smoke is there mostly for bulk. If you go into a pack of enemy, right, and you just smash them for, you know, to kill a unit, and you proc attack smoke on them, you're going to end up with 42 def, 41 res. That's really good. Well, effectively 42 defense, 41 res, as long as there's no harsh commands on the team, obviously. Which essentially means you're going to be fairly bulky. Spurn is also going to make you even bulkier, and if you're below 75%, you can actually abuse the 5 damage from Spurn pretty well. Keep in mind, you can't really have a healing special with him, however, because it's kind of awkward. You can have, like, Aether and just do, like, hit, get hit, hit, and then you have it ready, right? But it's not exactly amazing. You could run Special Spiral and then just hit, get hit, proc Aether, but since it's on your second hit, typically you'll do most of the damage on the first hit, right? Which means the HP of your enemy will be at like maybe 40%. So let's say he has 50 HP and you get him to 20. You heal yourself for 10 from that Aether. It's not exactly helpful. It helps a bit, but it's not going to save you in a pinch, which is honestly very awkward for you. But yeah, other than that though, it's extremely solid. Just Luna is very solid on him. Aether is very awkward. You can still make it work, it's just kind of pretty awkward in my opinion. Now, next up is the Gale Force set. You might be wondering why Fortress Def Res. It's just for more bulk. If you combo this into Attack Smoke, you have 48 Def and 47 Res, which means if the enemy has no ranged units, you can actually just kill a unit, proc Gale Force, kill another unit, and just stay there, fine, and just tank the rest of the team, which is extremely useful because it basically makes you a fairly solid Gale Force unit. Or in general, just to have more bulk. It's also fairly good for that. And another reason is because his attack is very high. 67 attack for Gale Force can be very easy to trip yourself with, which is another reason why I don't really suggest it. So as a result, it's kind of just better to have Fortress Def Res. It lowers your attack, makes it more consistent for you to proc Gale Force. You don't need to have an attack check for Gale Force or speed check either, because the weapon gives that to you, which is again very useful. So yeah, it's pretty solid. You have a lot of survivability with this, and you get to also kill several units in one turn if needed. Keep in mind, Spurn is not required for this. I just kept Spurn here because, I mean, if you have Spurn for the last set, you can also use it for this one, right? But know that Close Call, Repel, they both work just as fine for this. They all have the same effect. Spurn does not give you more damage if you don't do a spec damage that does damage, you know? So yeah. Though, if you don't want to move after attacking, it definitely can be a bit more useful. But yeah. Keep in mind you can also use Close Call with this, and that actually can be a bit more useful, so you can like kill something, back off at one square, and then potentially back off again, because, you know, that way you can get out of danger, basically, which is pretty useful. It's also more consistent in general than Heavy Blade, because there's always going to be that one asshole that's going to decide, I'm gonna make a 75 attack unit, and then you're like, oh, well, can't really proc Gale Force against that, huh? Though, keep in mind, it still is a bit iffy if you have to deal with Guard. This is going to trip you, obviously. Or Pulse Smoke. Pulse Smoke will also reset you. Even if you have like all the charge to proc Gale Force, and you're like at 5, right? And it goes to 0 charges left. At the end of combat, unless you kill the enemy, Pulse Smoke will just give you 1 more charge, and you won't proc Gale Force as a result. It basically cucks you. But yeah. Next up is this one. This is a more damage-oriented set. This one is purely damage. Time Pulse gives you 1 charge, and then the weapon gives you 2 charge per hit. So essentially, with Sturdy Impact, you're looking at 73 attack, right? And keep in mind, this set in particular, you might prefer to have Attack Rest solo whenever that becomes available. But yeah, right now you have essentially 73 attack. You would have 79 attack if Attack Rest solo was a thing. You hit, you proc, you kill. That's kind of the idea. Time Pulse gives you the 1 charge you need. And you have 45 defense with Sturdy Impact. So essentially what you end up with is 22 damage on proc. It's just for a pure DPS if you want to have actual damage. But yeah, the weapon will push your speed to 50, so your speed should be fine for the most part. But yeah, that's about all I had to say about Legion. Legion can be played in a variety of ways, and that's what makes him so solid. without actually having like some annoying drawback like what Setsuna has or Cecilia had, or having a very meh weapon like Shiro. But yeah, in conclusion, if you have already worked on a Legion, boy, you are going to be hella happy. I'm actually surprised. It's kind of sad in a way, because Clarice got a good pref, Legion got a good pref, Katarina has a 2018 pref, and then you have Eremiah with the fantastic, what is it, Slow Fear? Panic? I don't know, it's just some garbage weapon that's not actually a pref. Feels good, man. But yeah, I think that's about all I had to say. I thought I had something to say at the end, but I forgot. Yeah, let's see about it. For the foreseeable future, this channel has basically 3 video, maybe 2. 3, maybe 4. That. I still have to update the GHB Tempestral tier list, since George is absolutely amazing. I don't think I have to really explain that. He's literally a mini Crom. I think that about sums it up. He's really solid as a result. You have also the Legendary tier list update. So I'm actually going to cover the Legendary banner while I'm at school. That one's going to be a bit daunting to work on, but I mean, I kind of have to. I still haven't talked about what the other Legendary heroes are like, and why I consider them in the tier they're in. So yeah, that one might take a while. It might happen also after the banner's over. If so, I'm very sorry, but that's just school for you. I'm gonna still try to force myself to work on this one with priority when it's out, but other than that, you know, there's that. The other thing is going to be the Sacred Seal tier list update, because a lot of people seem to think Phantom Res is worthless when it's actually one of the best seal we've ever got. But that's a topic for another time. And then, to cover my bases, I'll also say maybe I'll work on the Choose Your Legend banner, but don't hold your breath on that one. I genuinely despise this Choose Your Legend banner on so many levels. The fact we got to Gen 5 and the fact it confirms we're going to get a new gen, every new Choose Your Legend banner, is just so fucking lame. Oh yeah, the thing I wanted to say is, also, if you guys want me to cover the Choose Your Legend, the Fat channel, I could do that, because that's basically something that takes me like 20 to 30 minutes to really cover. There's a lot of very slimy things in that one, and while I've complained about it on my Discord a lot, I've never really talked about it on the YouTube channel. Honestly, it was to a point I almost decided to quit the game, because my god, do they not care about the player base. They really do not. And I hate the goddamn false pretense that they just go like, oh, we're giving you free stuff. Like, the first Fed channel where they're like, ooh, guys, 19 free pull. Oh yeah, and how many of these are on banners that are not shit? 7. 6 on the Hero Fest and the last one on the Tabarn Kangas banner. Wow. Wow. Yikes. I'm just gonna say that. Yikes. It's, don't pretend you're doing us a service when you're giving us a free pull on a banner with Cecilia, Lilina, and Roy. Like, bruh. Nobody gives a fuck. But yeah. Complaining aside, if you guys are curious about my thoughts on that, I could work on this. Since, like I said, it's basically... The best part about these types of video is that it's just basically me sitting in front of a video and reacting to it. It takes 30-40 minutes and I'm done with it. It's not like something that takes me 6 to 7 hours to put together. and also requires me to have the motivation to work on it. But yeah, if you guys are curious, just let me know. I guess I'm going to maybe cover it then. Other than that, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. And yeah, have a nice rest of the day. And well, I'll see you all next time, I suppose. See ya!